This mercenary was living a retired, peaceful life.
Hey, get down!
But one day, his dark past came haunting him, not realizing he has only left his profession but hasn't forgotten how to kill. Welcome back to Paramount Recapped. I don't have many subscribers, but your single comment is a ray of hope to motivate me. The story starts with Jim Terrier and his friends chilling at a bar in Congo City. They're having drinks and chatting when the news comes on, reporting that several mining companies are pulling out of the Democratic Republic of the Congo due to rising corruption. The scene shifts to Jim and his girlfriend, Annie, waking up together. Jim tries to get Annie to stay longer, but she has to leave for work. Next, Jim is out on patrol with his team, and he spots two vehicles approaching from across a field. These vehicles belong to Felix and his team from Cox, and something feels off to Jim. He tells his team to get ready for their mission. Felix visits a hospital to see Annie, who's working with patients. He offers to give her a ride home, but she declines, saying Jim will be picking her up. Felix seems to have some interest in Annie. We then cut to Jim and his team in a car, planning to assassinate a minister. One of Jim's team members asks about the escape plan, and Jim explains that Felix has arranged everything, and they'll be escaping by plane. Jim sets up his sniper rifle in a luxury hotel room, looking tense. He tells Felix to keep an eye on Annie in case the operation goes south. Felix reassures Jim, promising he'll take care of Annie. As the minister's convoy nears, Jim gets ready. When his teammate confirms the minister is in the left car, Jim takes a shot, killing the minister. He then quickly leaves the scene. The next scene shows news channels reporting on riots erupting in the country. 8 years later, Jim is on a beach, surfing. He's chatting with his co-workers about the recent changes in their work. He's been doing this new job for almost a year now. Jim and his team, along with his assistant Eugene, are on a tour of the area, checking out some recent developments. They stop their car to take a look at something happening in a nearby village. While trying to fix a broken machine, Jim's team is attacked by armed criminals. Jim, being an experienced ex-mercenary, fights back with Eugene's help, taking down all the attackers. Afterward, Jim checks on Eugene and thanks him, saying, "I'll always remember this." He tells Eugene to secure the compound and make sure everyone's safe. Later, Jim drives off, looking a little shaken. Back home, he's clearly disturbed, and flashbacks of the minister's assassination start haunting him. The next scene shows Jim on a plane, deep in thought, scribbling notes on a piece of paper. He heads straight to London and walks across a bridge. In London, Jim goes to an apartment, opens a black packet from a safe, and examines some confidential documents. He meets his friend Terry and tells him about moving to London from Congo, asking who else knew about Project Calvary. Jim mentions that 3 men came to Congo to kill him. Terry tells him that only a few people knew about the project: Jim, Terry, Felix, and the client, who had direct contact with Felix. Terry mentions that Felix was last in Barcelona and suggests they meet him to figure out what's causing all the trouble. Jim warns Terry to be careful, as they might also come after him. As Jim leaves the building, it's clear that he's being watched. He heads to a bar and meets Stan, a colleague from his team, while others in the bar keep an eye on him. Stan thinks it might just be a misunderstanding, but Jim's convinced someone is after him, and he's determined to find out who. When some drunk patrons start bothering Stan, Jim loses his temper and beats one of them up. He and Stan quickly leave the bar. Outside, Jim passes out, and Stan helps him out. The next scene shows Jim in a hospital getting a brain scan. His doctor tells him that his brain is damaged and not working properly. Jim's brain can't handle stress anymore. He tells Stan that he needs to go to Barcelona for a safe house. Stan hesitates at first, but eventually agrees to help Jim. In Barcelona, Jim checks into a hotel and finds everything he needs, including a gun and documents. He begins to follow Felix and notices that Annie is with him, so he starts keeping an eye on her. Jim then shows up at a press conference where Felix is speaking and interrupts him, making Felix uncomfortable. Later, Felix confronts Jim in private, and Jim reveals he was the target of an assassination attempt in Congo, which shocks Felix. Felix threatens Jim, implying that he's misunderstood if he thinks he can take Annie away from him. In the next scene, Jim joins Felix and Annie for dinner at a restaurant. Annie gets emotional and uneasy when she sees Jim there with Felix. Felix acts rudely towards both Annie and Jim, which leads Jim to push him away. After Annie leaves, Jim follows her, trying to apologize and explain things, but she's too upset and walks off. Later, Jim is in his apartment, taking a bath when he hears a knock at the door. He grabs his gun and checks who it is. To his surprise, it's Annie. She asks why he's there, and Jim opens up to her, sharing the entire backstory. Annie suggests that they meet up for lunch the next day, mentioning that Felix has some crucial information to share. When Jim shows up at Felix's big house, he notices that Annie isn't there. Felix tells him that she's out riding horses. He then drops a bombshell, saying that 2 out of the 3 people tied to the assassination are dead, leaving only him as the final target. Jim immediately feels like something's off and tells Felix that it seems like everyone is closing in on them. Felix excuses himself to the bathroom, and Jim takes that opportunity to sneak a look at Felix's phone. What he finds confirms his suspicions. Felix has been leaking information about him. Jim confronts Felix, overpowering him, and warns Annie that they are all in danger. As they're talking, gunfire erupts from outside. Jim tries to protect Felix, but one of the gunmen shoots him, killing him instantly. Jim quickly informs Annie about Felix's death and insists they need to leave now. The 2 of them hide out in the basement. Jim grabs a knife to take down one of the attackers and gathers his gear, including a gun and a bulletproof vest. They lock themselves in a bathroom as a chaotic gunfight breaks out. Jim, a pro assassin, takes out all the attackers and steals a car to escape with Annie. On the way, they swap vehicles, and Annie demands to know everything. Who are these people and what's going on? Jim finally opens up, explaining that he was part of a team that was supposedly sent to provide security for local projects, but their real mission was to assassinate a minister. He apologizes to Annie, and they keep moving. When they get to Jim's apartment, he tells Annie to wait in the car and drive off if he doesn't come back in 15 minutes. Jim sneaks into his place through the back door and finds a bomb planted there. Realizing that people in the neighboring apartment are watching him, he defuses the bomb, then sets up the same one near the front entrance. He goes back in through the front and watches through the window to see if anyone shows up. As soon as an attacker approaches the gate, the bomb goes off, giving Jim and Annie a chance to escape. Jim tells her they need to visit a friend for help, so they head over to Stan's place. After some downtime and a meal, Jim gets ready to leave, telling Stan to take Annie to the police if he doesn't come back. Next, Jim heads to Gibraltar, where his friend speculates that Terry might be behind everything. He points out that everyone involved in the mission is now dead. Jim then steps outside the Interpol office, where he starts talking to a stranger. After a while, the person hands him a card, which turns out to be an Interpol ID. Soon after, Terry and his team show up. Jim calls Terry and leaves a message to meet at a theme park. When they meet up, Jim feels something's off, so he pulls Terry aside for a private conversation. Just as Terry is about to inject him with something, Jim overpowers him. Terry admits they had to eliminate everyone to prevent any loose ends. As they talk, Jim starts feeling lightheaded and dizzy. He shows Terry a document with all the evidence, but Terry brushes it off, so Jim shoots him. Before Jim can finish off Terry, gunmen open fire, and Terry manages to escape. Despite the gunman trying to take him out, Jim manages to send a text to Stan asking for help before losing consciousness. Jim contacts Terry as soon as he wakes up. Terry picks up the phone, saying, "I was expecting your call. Talk to your friend Stan." That's when Jim realizes Annie and Stan are both under Terry's control. Stan, in an emotional moment, asks Jim to end his life as a favor, which only makes Terry more upset. Terry shoots Stan, and Jim is consumed by helplessness as Terry threatens to kill Annie. Jim proposes a public meeting place, and to convince Terry, he sends him a video showing Terry directing the assassination. Alarmed by the video, Terry agrees to meet Jim in a public place. Jim tells him to let Annie go, promising to bring the notebook and all the evidence to him. Terry arrives at a stadium with his team and Annie. Jim takes out each of Terry's gunmen one by one, but just as the confrontation escalates, Jim is shot by a second gunman. He retreats into a room for first aid. The third gunman tells Terry that both others are dead, but as Terry emerges with Annie, she manages to escape. Jim fights the third gunman, and though both are injured with multiple stabbings, Jim manages to kill him. Severely hurt, Jim uses a rope to signal Annie. As Terry approaches, threatening Annie, Jim shoots him. Annie climbs to safety, and as Jim and Annie reunite, a bull charges at Terry, killing him. Jim contacts the stranger from Interpol who gave him the card, handing over all the evidence, and they are both taken into custody just as Interpol arrives. In the hospital, Jim talks with an Interpol agent, agreeing to help uncover all the details. The next scene shows the news reporting that all those involved in the operation have been arrested. The final shot shows Annie working in a village, helping people in need. She's shocked but relieved to see Jim, who has completed his sentence. They share an emotional reunion. And that's the story. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more recaps. Until next time, have a great day.